Thank you for joining us on episode 9 of the Mind Duck Books podcast.
Thank you. It's not the 4-duck problem anymore.
Yes, the ducks have left. Thank God.
Well, maybe it's the 5th duck.
No. Ducks are just gone now.
Okay.
No duck problems.
Okay.
Today, we're doing a very relaxing episode, our first fantasy book. It's by N.K. Jemisin. I'm very excited that this is a person of color, and I also wanted to say that I'm very happy that the minority of our books were by British and American writers. We've done Japanese and Chinese, and now... Well, actually, N.K. Jemisin is American, so yes. I take that back.
Yeah, she's from New Jersey, I think.
So the name of the book is the 5th season, which is the first of the trilogy. We're doing just the first one for now. We'll see what happens next.
Yes, the trilogy is called The Broken Earth.
And this should be a more easygoing episode. No hard sci-fi. I don't think there is any existential dread in this episode.
I think actually this book has a lot of depression points. Like to me, this has more depression points than the 3-body problem.
I have a thing with me that when I watch or read horror stories and sci-fi stories, I don't get the bad feelings because sometimes I feel very removed from reality.
I mean horror or fantasy?
Yeah, fantasy and horror, I don't get affected as much because I think of it as a game space or something. Like
okay.
I'm like, this is just fantasy, it's never gonna happen, I'm fine. But as soon as you start talking about spaceships, I'm like, oh god, this could happen. And then I'm just like...
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but for me personally, if I get more involved with the characters, to me that's what really makes me feel the emotions of the characters. And in Cixin Liu's books, it was kind of hard to empathize with the characters since they have no real personality. So
exactly. And this book has characters. That's exactly what I meant to say.
What a new concept.
Exactly. So I was very excited, and I didn't get so affected by this because I didn't like the characters that much, but they were still good characters, don't take me wrong.
Fair enough. I would like to start by talking about, rather than the characters, to me the thing that also I guess it's the main point of the book, and maybe not the main point, but the most interesting one is the setting. She's very original.
Yeah, that's true. That's the part I like the best.
Yes.
So it's all built around earth and rocks and stones and...
Yes. Which is probably the thing I hated the most when I was in high school studying geology.
Okay.
But yeah, it's built basically on this assumption that there is this world with constant earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. It's on a planet which has an insanely high tectonic activity.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of earthquakes.
Yeah, a lot of earthquakes.
Welcome to Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, so with earthquakes, of course, it comes with like also volcanic eruptions and tsunamis, and so other fun stuff like ash blocking the sunlight and things like that. So
everything constantly getting demolished, and it's basically almost like a post-apocalyptic story.
Yeah, in a way.
Would you say that?
Yeah, I would say the very interesting idea is that it is a fantasy story. And in a way, it is a post-apocalyptic world, but at the same time, like the apocalypse has been there like so many times that it's not the apocalypse anymore. And the 5th season, which is also the title of the book, is basically an apocalypse. What would be an apocalypse in another world, but here is just something like cyclical that happens every few centuries.
Yeah, waiting for the June.
Yes.
Never mind. Yeah, that's pretty creative.
Yeah.
On top of that, all the names, all the special powers instead of magic, all the cities and everything is based on rock and geology terminology.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Even the swearing, which I like the most.
Yes. So the author really cared about the details when creating this world, and she put a lot of effort in kind of giving it its own flavor. And it's very unique. And sometimes it feels like it's a bit too much, but not too much in a bad way, just overplayed for humor, which I think is really good.
Yeah, this didn't bother me at all. All of these aspects with the stones, that was the best part, definitely for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess before we get into more details, I wanted to quickly mention the writer. Have you heard anything about her before this book?
No, I didn't hear anything about her.
And why did you choose to read this, by the way? Because I read this on your recommendation.
Yes. I decided to read this book, and I got interested in it because there is a podcast I regularly listen to, which is an Italian podcast, and they recommend...
You can say the name if you want to promote them. I don't mind it.
It's a very funny name because it's called Power Pizza Podcast.
Oh, great.
Of course. But anyway, one of the people in this podcast is one of the most famous contemporary Italian comic book artists. His writer's name is Sio, and he really likes books, and he talked at length about the three-body problem, which is one of the reasons why I got interested in it.
I see.
And then he recommended this book, and he introduced this book by mentioning that it was kind of like the three-body problem, but with real characters. Yeah, like more emotions.
That's quite high praise from somebody like that. So maybe that's what's gonna push me over the edge to actually read the sequels, the next two books.
Yeah,
I'm still undecided.
He read the sequels too. Actually, in the last episode of the podcast, he recommended the sequels. I didn't listen to his recommendation because I want to read the book first. But yeah, he said that he was extremely impressed by the whole trilogy. Now, to segue into, I think the next main topic when talking about this book, I think one of the big reasons why he's so interested into, he got so much into this book, and is that as a comic book artist, he does a lot to try to promote equality and like respect for minorities. I mean, he draws mainly like nonsense comics, so mainly like that's not his main focus. But every time he can write something about something more serious, usually it's about minorities and it's about like immigrants and things like that. So I think, well, I don't want to say this is one of the main reasons, but definitely that's a point in favor of these books for him, because as we discussed when I started reading this book, definitely one of the main topics, if not the main topic of this first book, is racism.
Yeah, exactly. Oppression, racism, just minorities. That's what I want to mention with connection to the writer. So just to finish like the quick summary about her. So Nora Keta Jemisin, she's from the US. She's also a psychologist, and she is the only writer who won 3 Hugo Awards consecutively for each book in a trilogy. I think there wasn't ever a writer who did that.
Yes. As far as I've read, no one had won back-to-back Hugo Awards, but she won 3 consecutive Hugo Awards with all 3 books of the trilogy. Yeah, pretty impressive. I think at that time when she won the 3 of them, some kind of like right-wing oriented writers complained about it because they said that she won just because she was a woman and she's a person of color and she was writing about racism, blah 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 blah. So basically, she was getting pity points because of that, which is clearly bullshit. But yeah, there was a big debate about that at the time.
Yeah, I meant to mention this because obviously this is going to come up. Issue of racism, oppression is always going to come up, inevitably. And I really like culture, like artists, movies, stories, games that are made by people from different backgrounds. Especially with people who are black, it always comes up. And it always comes up in a different way. For example, if you know Dave Chappelle, have you ever listened to any of his stand-up?
No, I've never.
I really like him. He's really cheeky, really like almost rude, very funny, very topical, very true about everything. So the topic of racism always comes up, and it's like the main point that he just uses to have good jokes because he just says the truth. So there isn't anything that would make you bothered by that because he just talks about it in a way that's very honest. So he knows it's going to come up and he plans for it and he uses it well. Another person who I really like is Jordan Peele. He's a director and a comedian. So he does like comedy skits, and recently he's been famous for horror movies. So he's like a comedian who writes horror movies, and he's got very like original perspective on horror movies and also races and oppression and black people. And he always uses this to twist it into your face and like cleverly play onto your expectations and your like subconscious almost racism or expectations about black people and stuff like that. So it's like really, really well thought out and written. So he also knows that this is going to come up constantly, and he plays it on really well. And then there are, of course, many other writers and artists who just shove it in your face constantly. Like, racism is bad, oppression is bad. Every second page you're gonna just hear about this. So I was very worried about when I opened this book, and the first line of the book said, for everybody who...
The line was, to all of those people who have to earn the respect that is given to others.
Okay, so it was a little bit less upfront than I remembered, but I was like, yeah, this is going to come up, obviously, so I'm very curious what she's going to do with this topic and how she's going to incorporate it into the overall story. So do you think it was too much in your face, or do you think it was like well put, well done in this book, like the topic of racism?
Okay, so I had conflicting feelings about this in while I was reading the book, because, well, first let's introduce why there is racism and why it's so present in this book.
Okay.
There are two levels of racism. One, it's more kind of like similar to real Earth, in the sense that there are races, quote unquote, of people depending on the place where they were born, and they are associated with just physical appearance, physical features, and there is kind of like this superior sort of race which are called Sanzed, which are basically the ruling class of the whole continent. And then there are the other ones, and there are some traits associated with them, and there is some racism associated with that, but it's not so prevalent in the book. And then there is the other one, which is the fantasy form of racism, which is racism against origins or Rogas, which are these people who have the ability to essentially control the earth. Like, they can do all sorts of things, but their main point is they can stop or start earthquakes or volcanic eruptions and things like that, which, given the setting, is something extremely important and extremely powerful. And they are extremely discriminated against, to the point where it's not uncommon for them to get lynched. The book literally opens with a mother, the main character, finding her own child beaten to death, apparently by his own father, because the father found out that the child and the wife were origins.
So origins is a different word for a person who can control the earth. That's like the nice word, like the politically correct word. And then there is the bad word, which is Roga, which is Rogga, which I laughed a bit at when I saw it the first time.
I mean, it's a clear reference to another word which we won't mention, but
okay.
And at the beginning, when I started reading the book and we talked about this, I felt it was too much in your face. I think the book was just constantly telling you, oh, look at how discriminated these people are. Oh, look at how everyone hates them. Oh, look at how everyone is bad and these people just want to have a normal life. And I mean, in a way, it helps in creating some empathy and kind of like in creating some wish for the reader to, like, oh, I really want them to be free and to get, going back to the opening phrase, getting the respect they deserve. But at the same time, the book literally opens with one of them destroying the earth and killing millions of people and possibly all of humanity.
Yeah.
And in one of the first chapters, the main character kills a bunch of people, including the person who was trying to save her, just in a rage fit over someone. To be fair, they were trying to kill her, so it is a complicated situation. But at the same time, it's hard to empathize with someone when they have the power to destroy the world, and sometimes they use it to literally do that. But going through the story, I feel like it switched more to being towards the fact that everything has a cause and an effect. So, of course, racism is bad. You shouldn't treat these people badly just because they have these powers, and essentially all those who do that are assholes. But on the other end, if you do that, not only you're mistreating people, but you're also creating the chance that these people might actually become what you fear they are. Yeah, and I think that's where it switched to. And I think that was really interesting. So in the first half of the book, I did feel it was too much in your face. It was constantly just bombarding you with. But later during the book, it becomes more of a interesting point of the story rather than just a constant complaint.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually my point exactly. That's what I want to say. At first, it was very obnoxious, and then I was waiting what's gonna happen with this. Is she going to do a twist on it? Is she going to use it for something creative? And it kind of was from mediocre to like above average clever as far as the problem of oppression and racism is concerned. I felt like she didn't play it up too much. Like, it serves the story well. Like, it's a main point what this world is about. Yeah, so I didn't mind it. That's what I'm saying. Like, it was well written. Even though there were moments where I was a little bit like, really? Really now? Like, especially when you start reading this, they start explaining how all these rogas are like the worst, and everybody's like beaten to death. And then character comes in and he's described as like white-bearded, white-haired, blue-eyed, white-skinned. And I think there was a line that said the character was so white, it was pure evil. It was so evil that it was completely white.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Which is actually like, this always comes up with like, especially open mic or like stand-up comedy. It's very difficult to tell where the line is, where you are like making this about yourself. Like this line is completely fine. Like, the character was really white. It was strange because everybody else in the village wasn't white. So obviously, it's super strange. But because we are white, it seems stupid, this line, but it's not stupid at all. So it's just like us being stupid about it, not the book. So I mean,
like, throughout the book, I had this sort of inner dialogue with myself, and thinking like, is this too much, or is it just because I was never part of a minority, unless you want to count like now in Japan, but and so it's just because I don't understand their feelings rather than this is actually too much.
Yes, what I'm trying to say is I wish she played it up even more for a purpose. Like, that's exactly what Jordan Peele, I talked about, does in his stories. He always has this moment where you as a white person seeing this line feel this, and then he uses it for something in the movie or in the story, which I found is genius. So I was really hoping she's gonna do something similar, but she just mentions it, and it's like all written and put very well, but there isn't anything like I'd appreciate like the next step to take this for a spin to do something else, which is not necessary. It's just what I was wishing for.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree.
Well, anyways, I just want to get this out of the way because this always comes up, and I am really into black culture, black artists, and especially reading something written by a woman. I think it's always more interesting. So just to end this on a good note, I think it's taken in a good way, it's written well, and it's adding a lot to the story. And I think it's one of the reasons why it won all these awards and it's so highly regarded. So it's a good thing, definitely, that this is all included in the story. It puts it in a very different perspective. And it feels very fresh. Like, that's what I want to say, this book. I was very interested for who wrote it, and also I wasn't sure, is it a sci-fi or a fantasy book? So the thing, just before we move on to the spoilers, I wanted to mention the magic.
Yeah, so I think the way she handled magic was very, very smart. Because the problem with magic, usually in stories with magic, there are always two problems. One is the limits, like setting clear boundaries to the story, so that you can't say, oh, why didn't this character do this? This is, for example, to give a negative example, is superhero movies and comics, because to overhype the characters, they give them insane powers, and then you have a shit ton of situations where you could say, well, this character has these powers, they could have done this, why didn't they? I think in this case she did a very, very good job in setting the boundaries, or what is possible to do with these powers. And the second important point to me when using magic is contemplating the real, like, societal effects.
Yeah, that part I definitely liked, yes.
In this case, to give a very, very good example, is X-Men. In X-Men, of course, the mutants are extremely discriminated against, and people are afraid of them because they're really powerful. But because they're really powerful, they can also be used, and people try to use them as weapons. And you can clearly see a similar point of view in this story, and how they can be used in a practical way and how people see them. So that is, I think, something she did extremely well. Yeah, one of the highlights.
Yeah, that's also a good point too. So maybe just because I was very amused before we move into spoilers, I want to mention the swearing. So like we said, in all kinds of fiction, people deal with swearing in all kinds of ways, which I want to actually ask you if you think we should swear less on this podcast, because maybe if we didn't have to mark our podcast explicit, we would have more listeners.
In the 90s or like early 2000s, whenever the parental advisory label was invented, parental advisory albums constantly outperformed albums without the parental advisory.
Okay.
Did you know that?
I didn't. So we're the edgy podcast, I guess. But anyway, so they replace the word fuck or something with a different word. Most famous example is Battlestar Galactica, where they constantly say frack.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I watched Battlestar Galactica.
So in this, they replace all the swear words with things connected to Earth, which instead of God, they say Father Earth, and instead of fucking, they say rusting, which rust is like a big swear word. And or like Earth's flames and Earth's fire. So, so I wanted to say, if you don't read this, my favorite swear phrase from this book was when two characters surprisingly managed to accomplish something, and one of them said, "Earth's flaming farts." It worked. So I laughed about that. I think that's the only time I've ever laughed about swearing in any book I've ever read.
Yeah, I think that was a really good part, because it's kind of ridiculous how in fantasy words people don't really have swear words and they say "oh God" even though it doesn't make any sense, or like they just replace them like one to one.
Yeah. So this made it feel more like, I don't want to say grounded, but more like flavored.
It felt more alive as a word.
Yeah, it got more character. Like because of all this racism we talked about, and because of all this like clever magic twist on it, and the apocalypse, and the swearing, and the characters were good characters. It's not like charming, but it's got good character, this book. So I like all these parts working together.
Yeah. Something else I want to say very brief about the writing style is that I've never seen or read a book which talks so much about Joe's flexing or twitching or like any Joe movement. Like, she describes so much of the people's reactions by talking about their Joe's movements.
I didn't remember.
Which is extremely unique, and I'm not sure if I like it or not. It was just...
I remember his jaw was twitching or something. I remember now.
He flexed the muscles of his jaw. Oh, the muscles of his jaw were extremely tense, or his jaw was twitching. Like, why are you constantly using the jaw to describe the expressions of people? I mean, it's not bad. It's just very unique. I noticed it because it appears over and over throughout the book. So I'd recommend it. I think if you're into fantasy, it's one of the better ones I've read. Yeah, I recommended it to you before reading it.
Okay. I mean, after you've read it,
I don't
regret
recommending it. I don't regret buying the sequels before reading the first book. Which is something I sometimes do, which is very stupid.
I used to read a lot of fantasy, and it was all very bad because it was mostly based on video games. And this is definitely one of the better, maybe best fantasy books I've read. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention, N.K. Jemisin also wrote a novel tie-in for the video game series Mass Effect Andromeda, and it's apparently really good. Like it got really good reviews. One of the few really well written video game tie-in books. So that's a big praise. I was very positively surprised about it. Yeah, so thank you for listening to the non-spoiler part. If you want to read this, or if you're into fantasy, give it a go. It's an easy read. If you want to know what it's all about and hear the spoilers, let's move on to the next part. You might remember depression points from our previous episodes. So on this one, I'm awarding creativity points. So let's discuss the spoilers. The story in this one isn't so complicated, so we're not gonna like over describe it so much. Before we get into the story, I want to say one of my biggest gripes, and that's I was expecting this to end, like the world to end, and it didn't end. I'm very disappointed the world didn't end.
It kind of did.
Okay, I guess it depends what you mean by the world ending.
So, first, it was kind of a metaphor, saying the world is ending as a reference to the fact that the main character's world has ended because she had built this world for her. Yeah, like she mentions how the city where she lives in Tirimo is extremely isolated, and it's kind of like its own isolated world, and she had like her family and there's a nice life. But then, you know, throughout the book, like she is extremely sure that her husband was the one to kill like her son or their son. But on the other hand, we have no proof of that. Like she wasn't there. We haven't seen the husband. And the husband, as far as we know, has taken the daughter and he's taking her somewhere. So that's kind of strange. Like if he wanted to kill his son, why wouldn't he kill the daughter too? And why is he taking her somewhere?
Which I assumed is going to come up later, and I assumed that it's not going to be what she thinks it was.
So anyway, I think it's a way to represent that her world has ended.
Okay. In that sense, yes. I was just annoyed because they constantly kept beating you over the head with the phrase, the world is going to end, this is the way the world ends, this is really the way, this is the way to end the world for the last time the world will end.
But at the same time,
just like, why do you say this?
Before we talked about like the different cycles of apocalypses, right? And how, basically the apocalypse in this world is a recurring cycle essentially with all these 5 seasons. But in this case she clearly says that probably something will happen in the next 2 books, but the apocalypse this time is kind of definitive because this 5th season will last for centuries, if not millennia. All of civilization will be eradicated and possibly all of life from Earth, well, all of like sentient life will be eradicated.
Okay. I admit. But I was still annoyed. I was like, if nobody's like, I was like convinced everybody's going to be dead by the end of this book, or like something like monstrous is going to happen because. Well, it did kind of happen, but yeah. Anyway, I was just annoyed with this constant repeating of how the world's going to end. Just show me what's happening. Don't tell me it's going to end.
I actually wasn't
so annoyed with this.
Mainly because I know that there are 2 more books, but I wasn't really thinking.
Yeah. Maybe there's gonna be some more. So the book is divided into like 3 storylines that come together.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the most interesting points, the fact that like she presents these 3 different storylines and at the beginning, because the 3 characters have different names. You don't know that actually she's the same person, just at different moments of her life.
That's the big reveal at the end.
At about like 2/3 of the book, you kind of understand.
I wasn't still sure.
Because, okay, there is this point which I have to assume it was intentional. Like, it would be a pretty big mistake if this was unintentional. So, during one of the cyanide chapters, she mentions the blanket that Damaya always mentions. So there was a clear way to express that, these 2 are the same character. And, that kind of...
I missed it. Okay.
Put the seed in my mind that, probably all 3 of them are the same character. And then in the second half of the book, there is a chapter... cyanide chapter. Cyanide? I don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize.
In my head it was cyanide, but I don't know. It's a name of a rock, but I'm not sure what to say.
Anyway, in a cyanide chapter, at one point for just 2 lines, it switches to you. It says, you do this.
Oh yeah, that was something I want to mention. I didn't know why that was...
Yeah,
when they switched this, I was very suspicious, yes. But I meant... why did they even do that? Why was there even a U form in this? For
Essen,
do you have any?
Well, there is a chapter which basically explains that the person who's talking is Hoa, and so it's kind of like Hoa is telling the story to Essen. So you do this, because Hoa says that he has been observing Damaya, or however you want to call her.
I see now. Okay, because he's in there the whole way. Okay, I get it now. Yeah, so they added another thing. There's like a lot of small points that are not great, but I guess the sum is greater than the parts, so it works well together. So let's go through like each of the storylines. I don't have much to say about them. Maybe just like a few questions or like points. So the first storyline we already started is about Essen or Essun. She's a middle-aged woman. She has 2 children. unfortunately, her son is beaten to death because he's an origin or a roga, which means that he can control the earth. He's got magic powers. And the daughter is taken away by the husband we just mentioned. So she lives in this small city and she has to escape because people find out that her children are rogas and she is also, so she can control the earth. So she uses the power to kill a bunch of people and escape, inevitably. And she meets this stone eater, Hoa, which we mentioned. So stone eaters... I was very excited to find out that they're from space or something, and they keep hinting at it.
Really?
Do you think they are from a different planet?
I don't think so. I saw that in your notes. I didn't think about that even for a second. I'm not saying you're wrong. I didn't get that impression at all.
The whole time, maybe I was just primed for reading sci-fi, and I was just wishing to read sci-fi instead of fantasy. And they keep kind of like hinting on the stars and space and the moon and everything. So I was like, are stone eaters from the moon or something? That's my guess anyway. But I want to say, so Hoa is like this child who like... Yeah, also that's another thing why I thought so. Because Hoa, when they first introduce him, he like falls on the ground in like a meteor and crawls out of a lava capsule or something.
That is true.
Yeah, so I thought it was like a meteor, I don't know, whichever it is, that crashed from space and then he emerged from it.
That is true, but...
Yeah, we don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
But my question is...
No, that is a good point.
My question is, how does she not know that Hoa is a stone eater the whole story after what she's been through in the past? Because this is the latest in her life.
I think it's exactly because what she has been through in the past, because she says that Hoa is different than other stone eaters, and Hoa explains that he made his body different so that she wouldn't notice because he wants the main character to like him and to trust him. Because, for example, he bleeds and he like Essen thinks that stone eaters don't bleed. Or like the way he moves, it's much more fluid and much more natural. Like when... whereas when other stone eaters are doing anything, it's always mentioned how their movements are very like unnatural and off-putting.
I see. That makes sense. Yeah, that's all right. It's just wanted to ask what you thought. So she also meets her childhood friend Tonki. And
I absolutely didn't see that coming.
Yeah, me neither. That was also clever. Yeah. I have to say, this is how I know the book has good characters, because I remember all their names, even though multiple characters have multiple names. That's the same with Dune. So many people have so many names, but I still remember all their names. So that somehow means that I care. This is how I know. This is how I know I like the characters.
Yes.
And this is the first time I want to mention a very strange comment or note comes up for no reason and isn't mentioned ever again, and I'm super confused by it. So because we are already talking about Tonki, I copied a little quote here, and so she meets this like character. This whole storyline is about going through the like destroyed land and the apocalyptic land, and she meets Tonki, who's like a murky, grimy, like super dirty person. And then at one time, she starts changing her clothes and washing. And there is a line.
Yes.
I just gonna read what she said. What's in the book. So Tonki, she does this in front of you, of the main character. She shamelessly starts stripping down, squatting by wooden basin to scrub her. And you're a little surprised to notice a penis somewhere in there. I was like, what? Why is this here? And isn't she a woman? Is she going through a sex change? What's happening? And they never talk about it ever again.
It is referenced a few times, not explicitly, but essentially the way I took it is that she's referred as a woman for the entirety of the book, and clearly they're always using the female pronoun. So she what's her first name as a child?
Oh, Binov.
Binov, yes. So Binov, which sounds more like a boy's name, to be honest. I noticed that, but Binov and then Tonki, I think she was born with the body of a man, but
that's
always
what I
identified
assumed.
herself as a woman.
And they refer to it in a few spots in the book, but why is this relevant? Like, they don't do anything with it. Like, why is it even there?
I mean, I think it's just another way to show she's kind of because she was supposed to become one of the leaders of the world, basically, and she was born in one of the most important, influential families in the whole world. But I think it was just another way, because of course I would guess that for her family she was kind of a shame, and she did mention that she ruined a few potential arranged marriages.
Oh, that was there. I see.
Yeah, so I think it was just another way to explain, like, oh yeah, she can't be part of like this world of this reality.
I know what you mean. It's all true, but it's just all your assumptions, and they don't really say any of this directly or like use it for the story, other than to show that she's different and another oppressed individual in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it might come up in the next few books, because like when she appears as a child, like in the time of the story, it's a very, very short time. And when she appears as an adult, most of the time they're just going through, the apocalypse. So I guess that's like the main concern.
That's true. So that's the Essen storyline. Then the next storyline is Damaya, we already started talking about. So that's when she was a child and she was born to a family without the earth powers. Yes. So the way it works in this world is that the parents are ashamed of her. They try to hide her, and they either kill these children, or they try to get rid of them, or they give them away to this fulcrum.
Sorry. You mean the Bene Gesserit?
Okay. Dune reference if you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, let's talk about this just for a second.
Okay.
The fulcrum is clearly the Bene Gesserit. They have a Latin name. They use... In the story, of course, there are also men, which is clearly different from the Bene Gesserit, but it always seems like the women are the ones in power. They try to breed, the most powerful origins they can. And even Alabaster, he says that he's the Quisas Haderach, basically. Like, he's Paul Atreides. He's the product of all of these, manipulations with the breeding. I mean, yeah, they are clearly the Bene Gesserit. Like,
even
all about them is the Bene Gesserit. They dress in black. People are afraid of them, and basically they are witches.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on.
Yeah, I guess. So even the induction ceremony or the test to get in there, so they recruit all these children. So the parents, if they don't want a child, or if they don't want to put the child in danger, they can put them into this fulcrum where they train the children to be orogenes, which is the correct way to say roga, or the even worse way to say that if you read into it. And they basically train them to have stronger earth bending powers, so they can use them as weapons or to control the earthquakes and to use them for good. And to test the child, if they're not an animal like in Dune and they can control themselves, they break their hand, which is super similar to the Gomjabar test with the hand in Dune.
Yes.
But yeah, which I didn't mind that it wasn't so it was very similar, but it was different. So yes. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm okay. Again, I'm not saying it was plagiarism or anything, but it is the Bene Gesserit.
Interesting spin on this is the guardians. I really like that part. So each child gets a guardian who has to make sure that the children don't get out of control.
Yes.
And they basically watch over them, and they're the people who break their hands to test if they're going to rebel or not. And I guess if they rebel, they just kill them.
Yes.
And they're super creepy, scary, menacing beings.
Yes, and they have all sorts of superpowers to control the origins. To me, the Guardians are maybe the most interesting faction in the whole book. Because, they, as you said, they are presented as these super creepy, crazy, sadist bastards. Later you find out that actually they are the sons of Fulcrum members who didn't inherit their parents' powers. So they are not origins, but they do have some special... They have the possibility of getting some other powers, which makes them guardians. And apparently, there is a story, a dark story to them, because Shafa, who's the guardian of Damaya, so the main character, he has all of these nightmares, and a few times Damaya notices how he looks very sad. So clearly they have there's something more than just like being these evil monsters, and they get controlled by the spirit of the earth. That's to put it.
Well, there was a part where they find out they have some kind of a microchip in their head or something.
Yeah, well, not the microchip. Like they get like this surgery which allows them to gain some superpowers, but at the same time, like they get like one of them gets controlled by.
Wasn't very clear about this.
They have this implant. Yeah. And it is one of the things I'm looking forward to read in the next few books, because I don't know, they're just fascinating.
Yeah, definitely the most interesting part. So he's controlled by, you said, the Earth.
Yeah, because when Damaya goes with Binov, they go to the place where the
I remember that. I remember the scene. I wasn't sure who controlled them, and
and then the Guardian who discovers them, she starts saying something, and Damaya says, it's like she's not talking, like someone is using her body
I remember
to
that
speak.
very well. Yes.
Yeah, she's talking, like the way she's talking is as if she was talking as the spirit of the earth. Like she's saying some really weird shit about like the earth. You can kind of understand that she's mentioning the moon too, because later the moon is also mentioned in one of the legends. I don't know, it's very strange, but it's extremely interesting.
I couldn't fathom how doing surgery would give them superpowers other than using some kind of technology.
Yeah, they put something inside their organ, sesapine.
Yeah, and what that actually means, I guess we'll find out later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Damaya storyline. And the last most action-packed storyline, and the most like...
most interesting one?
I don't know. I guess, yeah.
I would say, okay, so the Essen one was by far the most boring one.
I didn't find any of them boring. I find the cyanide part the most infuriating, because
yes.
I hate the character after what she's done.
I think their story was pretty interesting. I could understand why she was so resentful towards Alabaster the whole time. Like, she was constantly getting mad at him for no reason. I mean, sometimes there was a reason, but most of the time she was just getting mad at him just because, I don't know. Like, she says he's irritating, but I think she was overly sensitive about everything.
Yes.
Like, anything he would say, she would get mad. And those were some of the moments where I was like, is this because, I don't know, I can't understand her? Or is it because she's actually like overly sensitive and like there's nothing wrong with what he's saying or what he's doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just pains of growing up. I don't know how old she is at this time.
She's 20-something.
Okay, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is the time after she's been trained as an Origin in the Fulcrum, and she's being sent to carry out missions.
Yeah.
With Alabaster, who is like the most powerful Origin in the whole place.
Yeah. So she has gone through the spice agony, and she got her blue eyes. So she's a Reverend Mother, but she's not a powerful Reverend Mother.
If you haven't read Dune, it's all Dune references.
Anyway. Oh, okay. One thing that I found annoying about her storyline is she mentions Alabaster's power being outrageously strong a million times. And a few times I was really like, you don't need to tell me again that he's so powerful. I understand he's super powerful. Okay, whatever.
I took it as she's being attracted to him and doesn't want to admit it. That's what I was reading into.
I
like
guess.
All these comments, she always talks about hating him. She's always talked about how powerful he is. She always talks about how he looks. She always talks about everything about him, just him. She doesn't talk about anything about him. So I thought she was just attracted to him and she didn't want to admit it, which she proves by having...
I mean, I think she respects him more than being attracted to him. I think she really, really admires him, actually. Which makes sense, but at the same time, I'm not talking about really as a character trait, just as a writing point. I don't need to read every 2 pages. Okay. Yeah, Alabaster, oh wow, he's amazingly powerful. Oh wow, look at how powerful he is. Oh wow, he's bending reality basically with his powers. Like,
I think this is what she would be thinking like as a 20-year-old.
Whatever.
And so they go on to this mission, and she's assigned to have children with Alabaster to continue this breeding program. And she opens the door and she's like, I'm here to fuck you. And Alabaster's like, what? And then they have sex and all this. And
she says that the dildo is better.
Yeah. And then they keep traveling together. Surely she's pregnant by now. But they keep having sex, and they explain it just to be sure.
Yeah.
And they keep having sex like every other day or something.
Yeah, every day,
like,
essentially.
What? Every day? Why? Okay, so surely 20 times is enough to make sure you're pregnant.
Yeah.
But anyway, they like describe how they like don't like it and like it, and then they like it more or less, and then sometimes they are like bored, so they just have sex just what?
Yeah, because they have nothing else to do.
So how does she hate it so much? She keeps talking about how she hates it so much, how she cannot do it, how she doesn't want to do what the fulcrum wants, and then she constantly has sex with him even though she hates it. I was like, what? What is this character? Like,
That's
why
true, but I would say this. One of the interesting part of Cyanide, or like the second storyline, is that she's shown how her main goal is just to establish herself within the fulcrum. Like she has always she can't see herself outside the fulcrum. Like she has been so much mind controlled by the fulcrum, she can only see herself within the fulcrum, and her main goal in her life should be to do what the fulcrum wants, so that she can become what the fulcrum wants her to be, and she can get a better position. That's all she wants. She can't see anything else in her life, and she meets Alabaster, who technically is all she wants to be, because he's the most powerful origin in the world. He can literally go around without a guardian. He can do essentially anything he wants, and that's what she wants, but he doesn't seem to appreciate any of it. He seems miserable. And I think one of the reasons why she's constantly irritated by him is that he is what she wants to be, but he doesn't seem happy about that at all. And so he's kind of crushing all of his dreams and crushing all of the things she had been looking forward to.
That's true.
And the other thing, and also he constantly challenges her knowledge. Like he says, "Oh, do you actually know how the nodes are? Do you actually know that there are more tables to stone lore? Do you actually know that this and that?" So he's constantly challenging all she knows and all she has learned from the fulcrum. So I think that's a very interesting point in their relationship. At the same time, I do think she complains too much about him. For no reason.
I was like rolling my eyes about this, because I was like, yeah, she's here to have sex with him and she hates him, and they're going to travel and do this adventure together. Obviously they're gonna end up together, so just shut up. Just have sex and be happy about it, damn it. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What do you want?
I don't know.
This part I like the least of the book. Like you said, the lesson was boring, but I found it intriguing. Like it was slower, but I find it like more intriguing. And the Cyanide, many times I felt either infuriated by her decisions, hating what she does, how she thinks, what she wants, and then also like being super bothered by random things that happened, and I was like, why is this here? Like all this sex, like
I don't know. To me, it was my favorite part, but it was infuriating in a few moments. For example, it is infuriating how Alabaster knows so many things, which is something that is so common in so many stories and always bothers me. Like Alabaster knows so many things, and I understand why at the beginning he doesn't want to share his knowledge.
Exactly.
I understand he maybe doesn't trust her, whatever. But after they go to the island, why isn't he telling her everything?
Exactly.
Like there is no reason why he just doesn't go and says, "Oh, this is all I know about Stone Eaters. This is all I know about."
Exactly.
Like,
they've been living together so long. Why doesn't he say it?
Yeah. And there is no reason why she isn't asking.
It's dumb, but at the same time, maybe it's real, because we just talked about like relationships with other people, and apparently some couples and husband wife, they never talk to each other. So maybe this is one of them.
They're a Japanese couple.
What? Yes, maybe.
They sleep in different rooms and they meet only to procreate. Anyway.
So just to sum up this storyline like very, very shortly. So they go on to this mission and it fails, and a bunch of people die, and they move to like an island to escape, and they get pursued by these guardians, and then they end up onto this island where they have a chow together. So it's very intriguing, like adventurous storyline. It was fun, like it was very action packed.
I would say, and yeah, on the island there is the only one thing which I really hated, because I think it was kind of dumb, which is, she goes on the boat, she decides to go pirating with her manly man. She has a constant threesome with.
Yeah, I'm trying not to say this yet, so let's say it now. So she gets to this island, and there's a guy who's like a giant, muscular, super sexy man, captain pirate, everything you can think of. Let's call him Hunky Boy. Hunky Boy has like dreads, and it's like super like half naked, and he even smells sexy, everybody says. And the first thing they do, they don't even talk to him or something. And he, so Cyanide and Alabaster, they already have been together. I think she's already pregnant or not yet?
Yeah, she's probably already pregnant.
With Alabaster's. So she's already pregnant with Alabaster's child. They're already like living a life together. They're already together. They've been together so long. They go to this random island where this random hunky pirate is sitting somewhere. And they both look at him. And Cyanide's like, so who's gonna fuck him first? Do you want to have him first or should I have him first? And Alabaster's like, oh, I go first.
Well, no, Cyanide says, oh, you can have him first. She does,
okay,
she does
mind.
the good bro.
That's like, what? How is this a conversation in your relationship when you're having a child now? After all this, we've been through together.
I would say, like, Cyanide never, in a way, this is a very interesting point. I know, like, it sounds super weird, but because even when they have a baby, she doesn't care so much about that baby compared to, the babies she has later. Like, when the baby, like the son she has as Essen dies, she's completely shocked. But she didn't give a shit about...
I guess that's supposed to be the character arc that she grows up.
And I think the whole point is she had the first baby, Conundrum?
Conundrum,
not
maybe?
Conundrum. It's a rock name, but I forgot. Anyway.
Oh, sorry.
She had that baby as a fulcrum baby while she was still like... In her mind, she was still like a tool of the fulcrum. And that's why she didn't care so much. And that's why she felt bored on the island, even though she was having a peaceful life. Because she wanted to do something. She wanted to do what she was trained for. She rejected the peaceful life. And she rejected the family life. And she didn't give a shit about the baby. And she constantly asked herself, oh, do I love Alabaster? Or do I love like Hunky Boy? Or do I love the people here? Or do I love my life here? And she starts realizing, yeah, maybe I do love all of these things, but it's kind of strange the fact that she has to question that. And I think it's a very, very well written point in the sense that she doesn't really realize who she is and what she wants because she grew up being trained as a tool and she sees herself only as a tool. And the point where everything changes is when the Fire Nation is attacked. But besides that, the point when everything changes is when she has the confrontation with her guardian on the boat, and her guardian first says, do this, and she is the line is something like, oh, a life of like being told she always has to do what she's told, so she can't stop herself from answering Shafa's questions. But then at one point she says no, and Shafa says, oh, you must never tell me no. And she snaps and she's like, no, fuck you, I hate you, I will not do what you want. And I think that's when she stops being Cyanide and she becomes Essen, and she becomes the person who's able to accept a peaceful life and a loving family and loving her children. Yeah. Because she stops being a tool. Yeah.
I want to mention another thing that you talked about how it's well written that they have clear limits and like the powers and the earth magic is kind of well defined until they can turn it on its own and like destroy people by turning the power onto their flesh or something.
Yeah, that's what the Guardians do.
So that was a moment where I was like, I'm not sure about where this is going.
That's why I think the Guardians are interesting. Like, I want them to explain because I think that's when the Guardians will be explained, like we will also understand the origins of the Origins powers.
I was feeling towards the end of the book it was getting out of hand, like they were starting to use the powers for almost anything. They could like control everything and just explode people with it. So I was like, I liked it more before this happened. It reminded me a little bit of the 9th episode of Star Wars, which was complete nonsense, how they used like the Force basically to do anything and bring people back from the dead. So I hope in book 3 somebody's not gonna be like, oh, this sludge on the floor, blood and bones, I'm just gonna like turn the power on its own and just like resuscitate, resurrect, yes, thank you. Resurrect this person because I can like use these powers to bend blood and bone. I don't know. I hope that's not gonna happen.
So I mentioned how I like the character arc, and I think there is a very deep read behind it. But at the same time, I really hated, just from a narrative standpoint, the fact that, she was having this peaceful life. I understand why she wanted to go pirating. I understand why she was still doing some bullshit. But then, as a reader, you know 100% what's going to happen, that she will go and she will mess up and things will end up badly. I understand. But so she goes and she makes a first mistake when she kind of reveals her powers. And so she has to kill 2 boats full of people. Yep. She has to destroy 2 boats full of people. And I thought, okay, so she made this mistake. Maybe this is what will bring, an end to her life here. But then she goes to the city, to Alia, the city she accidentally destroyed. She does something which is completely stupid. Like, you literally just had to destroy 2 boats full of people, and you deeply resent yourself for that because you accidentally reveal yourself. And then you do something which is clearly going to reveal you. What the fuck? Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And it made no sense from any standpoint. And it was just an excuse, and a narrative excuse for the Guardians to find out where they were, and for the story to move forward. And I really hated that. I think it's by far the worst part of the book. And I don't want to say ruin the book for me, but this book went from amazing to just good to very good just because of that. Like, it completely changed how much I like this book.
Yeah, I didn't like this part at all. And if she did that at the beginning, like when she was like fresh off from the fulcrum or something, and she would be like very naive, I would buy it. But after having a child and living on this island for years and having sex with hunky boys or whatever, I don't...
Clearly the highlight of her life.
If I am willing to accept all her relationship triangle nonsense and loving 2 men, having a child and having this life and leaving this behind on a whim and in putting all of them in danger just for like her rage quit fit Earth explosion,
No, I agree. It didn't make absolutely any sense. I really didn't like that. I really didn't like that. I think it was completely bonkers, and it was there just to make the story move forward, which is a shame.
I didn't went from amazing to good. I went from like, I'm kind of bothered because I don't like starting books, so when they were like building up the world, I was kind of bothered by all these things, but then it came together. I was like, this is good. I really enjoyed this. I wonder where it's going to go. And then all the post-apocalyptic, all this, like the characters were fun and all this was great and I like it. And I'm curious what the Stone Eaters are. I'm curious about this. And then this happened and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I want to read the next book.
Oh, wow, really? Okay.
I'm not sure.
I'm really curious. I decided, because I had this, this is such a stupid thing, but I had this internal conflict about which book I want to start reading next. If I want to start reading the second book of this trilogy but then I just decided I want to finish this trilogy first, just because I'm too curious about a few things.
Okay. Maybe I'll let you go ahead and let me know if it gets better. I didn't like the ending because I was hoping it's going to go somewhere, like the reveal that it's all the same character. Great, I like that. Then they finally, I was sure that she's going to meet the husband or the guy Alabaster when he's old. And I want to hear what happened to him when they were not together, and I want to know what's like coming up next, and I want to know if the Stone Eaters are fucking aliens or not, and I want to know if the aliens put brain chips into the Guardians or not, and all this. And they just like finally meet, and that's the end of the book. And I was like, this is the stupidest cliffhanger. You made me angry by this stupid ship pirate battle where everybody exploded. You made me upset about the magic you built up so much, because now the magic can do anything. The character is stupid, and now you don't even end it well, and goodbye. So I was very mad at the ending.
I wouldn't say that the magic can do anything. And
it's not. I was just like
the ending was very abrupt. I agree with that. But I think that's because she brought the whole trilogy together, clearly planning on starting the book with just a shocking point, which is like, the guy cracking the earth, ending with another shocking point.
It makes sense, but I didn't appreciate it.
I didn't mind it.
Because the book was already kind of long to me. I would have liked it shorter.
Oh, okay. I didn't mind it at all. Like, to be honest, I don't mind the way it ended.
I'm sure it's gonna be better once you've read all the books in the trilogy. And they have to be good since they keep winning awards.
I mean, or maybe there's just more Honky Man threesome. Maybe that's what the other two books are.
Yeah, I was trying not to say this, but you brought it up again, so I have to say it. So she has. So they decide who's gonna have sex with Hunky Boy first, and then they start living together. And there are like many scenes where they describe how she finds them having sex, and she just casually joins in. There was like a scene where she literally said like oily cock on cock, and then I was like in, and I joined in. I was like, what? Why is he here?
I mean, why wouldn't it be
and
here?
And then another thing, she leaves after having sex, and there's like a grandmother walking on the street or something, and she's like, I heard you like tying all these knots while you have sex, ha ha ha. I was like, what? What is this?
I think that was alright. Well, I didn't mind it.
I mind having sex for the sake of being edgy, surprising, just for having sex. And I really like having sex in the story for the story, and this only purpose of all this was that she would have a strong relationship with the pirate Hunky Boy, and then they kill him off anyway. So it didn't really pay off
I was
much.
so sad about him. He was so cool.
I was surprised that he was killed off, because I was kind of guessing that Alabaster will be killed off and she's gonna end up with the pirate.
No. I was sure that Alabaster would survive, because it was clear that Alabaster was the one who destroyed the Earth at the beginning.
Okay, let me rephrase. I was sure she's gonna leave Alabaster and end up with the pirate.
I mean, I was kind of sure that everyone on the island would die, and she would be the one to blame for it. Okay. At the same time, I was secretly hoping Pirate Hunky Boy would survive and then make a grand return in the second book. Like at one point, she wouldn't be like.
And that's what I'm very afraid of. I'm very afraid somebody's gonna resurrect Hunky Boy.
Nah, I don't think so. I think Pirate Hunky Boy gave what he could give to the story, which is endless threesomes. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I just want to say I wish it was in there more, or not at all. Like, it was so abrupt. Like, you were just reading the story.
Pirate Hunky Boy.
No, the sex. Like, there was always a story, and then like suddenly super furious sex, and it was like one line, one paragraph, and then never mentioned again, and then suddenly again. Why isn't there more like easy into it a little bit? It's just like, it almost felt to me like she wanted to put it in there just to be like, oh, do you remember this part in this book? Ha 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 ha, and that's it.
I mean, I understand. I think it is a decent part of the book, the sex. Like, it was one of those things where a few times I was wondering, like, does this feel strange to me because I'm a man and this is a woman writing about sex? Or is it because it actually is strange?
It's very strange.
I don't want to.
If she like set it up a bit, like they do in Dune references. In Dune, the sex is present, but they don't describe like genitalia. They talk about orgies and why they happen, and they have a purpose in the story. And you're thinking
well, it was also written in the 50s.
So anyway, even if he described like how they're having. What they're doing with their genitals, whatever, I wouldn't mind, because they have a purpose for this spice orgy. Like they do it for something, and
you need to read the fifth and the sixth book.
You told me already. I'm excited. Yeah. But anyway,
so this might change. They might change your perspective on what you're about to say.
Oh, I thought it would be even better. Never mind.
So.
Never mind. I'm just repeating myself. Let's stop doing it.
That's fine.
So the story ends. It all comes together. So they meet in this underground, hidden city that's carved in crystal or stone or something.
Yeah.
And she meets dying Alabaster, who is revealed to be the person who cracked the earth in half, or did the first chapter. And he did it with the Stone Eaters, I think.
Yeah, like from the beginning, it was clear that he has this Stone Eater ally, and essentially it seems like some Stone Eaters choose to follow their own origin. For example, the Amethyst one is following Alabaster. There is another one who's following the origin in who's the leader of the shelter where they end up with. Hoa is following the main character. Yeah, why that is, we don't know, but that's pretty cool.
And also there are these obelisks that they can draw power from, and they like fly through the world towards Cyanide, and I thought those were spaceships. That's why I was saying that Stone Eaters are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so what do you think those are?
I don't think they're spaceships.
I thought they were like pods, because one of the Stone Eaters is like in it, and it's like broken and he's dead or something. So I imagine he traveled through space in it, and then he crashed into Earth and died or something.
I think they're not spaceships. I think they are some sort of... Because like the place where they were made is in the fulcrum. So my theory is that they are sort of crystallized origin power or something like that.
We'll find about all that, I guess. One last point to finish this up is, how do you feel about the Stone Eaters as a thing? Do you think they should have been more talked about? Do you think it's good that they're like mysterious, we don't know anything? Or
I think it's like the amount they're talked about is perfect. Okay. Like, it's enough to intrigue, but it's not too much, so it doesn't reveal.
I agree, it worked. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the book.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for recording it on a short notice. I was happy that you could do it as soon as you finished reading it, because my gripe or my nuisance is I always want to talk about the book as soon as I finish reading it. Usually I don't get to talk about the book at all, so thanks to this podcast, it's very, very enjoyable for me to discuss the book. Yeah, I guess that's it for this episode. Thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for joining me, Pablo.
Thank you.
I'm very surprised you were depressed by this book. I was just like going on an adventure. I didn't mind people dying.
I was really surprised, but like, for example, when Honky Funky Pirate died, I was pretty sad.
Yeah, and Cyanide kills so many people and doesn't care. I hated her. I hated her. Damaya, I liked. Essen, I respected. Cyanide, I hated. So, Connoisseur of Despair approves. I approve just slightly. So, thanks for listening, and see you in the next one. "12 creativity points for Book 1 of the Broken Earth trilogy." We'll finish the trilogy up, but before then, on the next episode, we are gonna go back to H.P. Lovecraft and look at a book called Shadow over Innsmouth, along with a special guest. So rate us on Apple Podcasts, please, and join us for the next one.